James Cramer or Jim Cramer says you got to buy Bitcoin. So, of course, that most likely means you got to buy something else. Well, we know Bitcoin is going to 83K. That's what we just told Patreon. And then we told you yesterday that may actually be too conservative. Bitcoin may be going to 96K. All the altcoin picks that we gave Patreon Platinum in a big rush actually wound up working out. And ENA, one of the coins, actually made a headline for its price move on CoinGecko. Question is, what's next? Well, obviously, that would be altcoins. We have to look at ETH, Solana, and XRP. And I will tell you right now, and I will borderline prove it to you, that ETH is no longer boring. And a portfolio where you have a dump truck full of Bitcoin and ETH is no longer a boring cop-out portfolio. They are the portfolio potentially for the AI age, where everything begins to move so fast. Things that move slow, like Bitcoin, or things that have staking, like ETH, wind up holding together better than just about any other cryptocurrency. Now, with all that said, I don't think anybody can see me or hear me. So if you're seeing or hearing me on YouTube, please feel free to comment in the comment section down below, and I will just keep talking about ETH. Okay, now let's talk about how Ethereum works. Ethereum works with a staking mechanism, proof of stake. And everybody has been all down on this, all like, oh, ETH is not decentralized. And then, of course, ETH hasn't made any price moves. So everyone thinks ETH is dead. And of course, it's not at all. Okay. I suspect no one is hearing me. Can you hear me out there? I don't think anybody can hear me out there. Okay, I will keep talking. Now, the next thing you will need to know is, what about XRP? Should you keep XRP or should you get rid of it? What role does the XRP ETF play in all this? You're like, the XRP ETF? What about the Solana ETF? What about the Solana ETF versus Solana itself? Is everyone short the Solana ETF? Did they decide, did the validators come in and decide to short the ETF as a way to hedge their Solana rather than using perps to avoid any type of repeat of October 7th or October 10th of last year? I suspect that that is the case, that they have shorted the Solana ETF. Okay, I am on Twitter. So somehow I got to Twitter. I don't know if I'm on YouTube, but anyone listening to this, I am on Twitter, and I'm just going to keep streaming. We will look at TA for Ethereum. We will also look at news, especially about US debt. So let me just get right into that. Here's a quote from Zero Hedge. A 5% long bond isn't the crisis. It's the receipt. And the 15 years when money was free did far more damage to growth than normal interest rates ever will. What does that mean? Well, they printed money. A small sector of the economy made absurd amounts of money, and everybody else got smoked. Like, if you weren't a part of the NVIDIA class, you got destroyed. You got absolutely destroyed. Costco, everything 10x or 5x. And you were left wondering, is this ever going to end? And then to add to it, there's a geopolitical event which is causing a crisis in diesel fuel and potentially gasoline. That's dangerous, very dangerous. Now, when you add all this up, you ask yourself, could this get any worse? Yeah. Could get any worse because the event in November could be the prelude to another event 2 Novembers from then, where you have someone come into office and look at this $40 trillion in debt, and it'll be much, much higher by then, and engage in wealth confiscation. Now, I know that's a little grim. I know. And we don't want to talk about what's grim because we've been dealing with that for 10 months. But when do you get ready for these things? Now. I mean, this is what we talked about in the YouTube member area. Zero Hedge has got President AOC's first term with the whole world kind of falling apart behind her. Why is zcash making a new high? Well, other than the fact that no one owns it, there's going to be an ETF, and it's essentially encrypted Bitcoin. Although I don't think it perfectly fits this model. I don't think zcash is better than Ethereum. I know that's insane for me to say that because I was the zcash guy at $30, and zcash could still go to 1,000. But the idea that you need to get involved and use crypto now to store your wealth and get involved in this AI trade, which right now could be much narrower than anyone thinks. We went through coins this morning in the YouTube member area. We did like a repeat where we came up with some new coins in the ETH universe. One in particular, Toby liked a lot. And we reviewed the portfolio that we came up with from our countering the crypto is dead BS, which was on YouTube everywhere less than 10 days ago, roughly 10 days ago. Now it's obviously not dead, but I don't know that people believe it. I mean, I saw a tweet from one huge influencer talking about mean reversion, meaning, you know, there was going to be a downtick in crypto. Yeah, there is going to be a downtick in crypto. You're looking at it. You're looking at it if you're watching this on Twitter. Okay. It didn't make it to YouTube, but it made it on Twitter. So I'm listening to this guy going, wait a minute. Are we talking about mean reversion on this day trade? Or are we talking about mean reversion where, you know, I don't know, ETH goes back to sort of the middle of its historical range? Or there's a giant head and shoulders bottom in Ethereum on the weekly chart that no one is looking at. No one. Like, watch this. What's the one chart market update? Is this a shoulder from 2023 ahead from March of 2025 where they, I don't know, for whatever reason, felt the need to take ETH back to the old 2017 high? And then, of course, the other shoulder, which was just ETH going to absolute depths of depression, which is classic for a right shoulder. And I mean, can ETH just go full Tom Lee and go up here to like a Gann line at 7,300? Because this would be the path. Boom. That's how that head and shoulders would play out. The upside target is all the way up at 9,000. Now, of course, that's going to take a substantial amount of time to get there. But why would it not get there at this point? Why would it not? Let's talk about it. We know Bitcoin is going massively higher. We know that. And we know that there's a very old school way to look at Bitcoin rallies. that when Bitcoin does massive rallies, the trading community or fast money, or even players like BlackRock who have to like do asset allocation, once they miss the Bitcoin move, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to turn around and go, okay, what hasn't gone up yet? This classic equities thinking. What has not gone up yet? And they're going to go, well, Ethereum or Solana or XRP has not gone up yet. And you know what? We're going to go chase that because we got to chase something. We got to go chase something. And it's that simple. You're like, wait a minute, don't they do asset allocation and don't they do all this like super fancy stuff? No, actually they don't. They don't. They just go right to what is working and what has not gone up yet, which is ETH. Now, let's talk more about ETH relative to people's attitudes about it. So everyone thinks ETH is dead. No one is talking about it, which is why I'm talking about it. Like first, no one was talking about AI. We talked about it. We talked about AI on chain, and then everyone starts talking about rails and code economy. Again, we've been on this for God knows how long, almost ad nauseum. Refuse to get bearish, and this is why. Because everybody who was bearish is now fighting this move. They're fighting it. Or they don't want to participate, or they think they're getting a big dip. And today, in my opinion, if you look at Alpha Intelligence, is the dip. Also, there's an issue. Well, wait a minute. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. When we do live TA, we're going to talk about the lack of resistance. We're going to talk about that. But we want to start talking about ETH. Now, there's a ton of real-world assets sitting on ETH, and there's a ton of stablecoins sitting there. Somebody big is going to come out and copy this thing with the velocity of money. So the guy I used to work with, Jordy Visser, started talking about the velocity of money in terms of just how fast money's going to move via stable coins, how that's going to affect economic growth and earnings. I took it one step further and I said, which cryptocurrencies will benefit from things moving around fast? And it's a short list, which again, we went over this morning and is all over Patreon Platinum. Links are down below. It's time to come home or you're going to miss this. Sorry to be a jerk, but we can't miss this, which is why I'm doing on-the-fly live streams, on-the-fly VIP streams. Just crazy. If people discover that ETH is the number one beneficiary or the number two or the number 1A beneficiary of this AI world where AI is on chain. Like there's Bitcoin for scarcity, and then there's ETH for functionality. For functionality and value to token holders, value to stakers, because as activity picks up, ETH starts to burn. And if they ever pivoted and gave stakers just a little bit less, you'd have a supply shock in ETH. You could have a supply shock in ETH anyway if AI agents went nuts. Currently, this is not factored in. In other words, people have been so bearish. Let me start over. People have been so busy being bearish about guys like Michael Saylor and, the fact that he had to sell $200 million in Bitcoin, which is now a joke. Part of me wishes he had sold everything he needed to sell so he never has to sell again. He'd be buying it all the way back up now. He would just be pouring in, whatever. That was the story. Michael Saylor disaster, corn on the cob. Oh my God. Yeah. Nobody, and everybody was, of course, focused on the fact that, Vitalik was selling ETH to Tom Lee at much higher prices. There's also information to be gleaned there. Tom Lee is early and laughed at, just like he was in 2018. And frankly, when a project gets bearish its own project, it's got nowhere to go but up. Nowhere to go but up. This is not being talked about just from a pure sentiment and TA point of view. it's not being talked about. And don't worry, it will be. Because all you need is for somebody to realize that today was the dip. Everyone's like, yeah, I'll buy it later. I'll buy it Monday. Yeah. I'll wait for the ETF to open. I'll buy it Monday. Yeah, okay. This is the dip, because I saw this last night. I'm up in the middle of the night. Everything's rushing up. Everyone's doing panic buying. And then, boom, everybody comes in. Big players come in. Bag holders come in. Take profits. And everybody goes, ooh. Everybody has what I would call the knife experience, where they become afraid. Every time it goes down, they're going to buy the top. And they're afraid it's going to turn around and go back down like it has for 10 months. Not realizing that what's gone on for the last 10 months was the reaction or the hangover from the black swan from the Binance crash in October of 2025. If there's anything I got right here, is that some guy on here, I don't know who it was, but God bless him. He said, you know what? I'm exhausted from looking for the black swan. Everybody thinks this ends with a black swan. And I said, wait a minute. If you're expecting a black swan, it's not a black swan. The definition of that is something that comes out of nowhere and is devastating, which is exactly what happened on the Binance crash. And then they didn't get the cooperation from the Fed that they wanted because Powell was an imbecile. That's it. That's it. We just didn't get friendly language or friendly anything out of the Fed, and everybody FOMO'd into the AI trade. Because if I asked you now, why did Bitcoin go down over the last 9 months? Why did altcoins go to zero? See, your answer will be, well, it was just a bear market. Everyone genuflected and it was time for a bear market. Okay, fine. Great. Now I'm going to ask you this. If that's the case, how long did it take to unwind prior bear markets? Sometime, in 2019, it took a while for Bitcoin to get back to the 2017 high at 20K. It took a while. You want to know how long it's going to take now? 2 weeks. Less than that. Bitcoin's going to 96K. Boom. I got to do another Patreon TA report. That's just going to go because institutions have to get in. Nobody's long the Bitcoin ETF, and we've talked about this. And we're going to talk about it again. And if you think this problem is bad in Bitcoin, oh, it's even worse in Ethereum. And it could be more. It could be worse in Solana. Now, we'll also talk about XRP. Frankly, the question you have to start asking yourself is, on the next move up, do you want to start dumping XRP and moving into Ethereum or Solana? That's a tough thing to say. Hopefully, Ripple or the US government has got an announcement that preserves Ripple's scarcity. Because if all Ripple does is move back and forth, they're going to need something more than that. They're going to need something on XRP Ledger. They're going to need staking, and hopefully they're working on this. Please tell me you're working on this. For the sake of cryptocurrency and altcoins and retail, please let that be happening. Now, outside of that, there is a universe of people who don't understand what Ethereum can become and what Ethereum can trigger. Now, traditionally, Ethereum creates alt season, or Ethereum helps all altcoins rally. Now, you cannot get a rally. You cannot get a rally in ETH, and you cannot get a rally in altcoins without first getting a rally in ETH. Period. And no one thinks ETH can rally, and no one thinks there can be an alt season. Here we go. Now, I'm going to qualify alt season in a minute. ENA surges 48%, but it's not altcoin season. This stuff's up 40, 50, 80%, but it's not altcoin season. Can you believe this from crypto media? Analysts split on whether Bitcoin surge past key levels signals a new bull run. Analysts sit around and debate whether a breakout is actually a breakout. how a treasury buyback tweak helped Bitcoin surge 25% in days. In other words, crypto media is just now picking up on the fact that when Uncle Sugar came out and said there's a government debt problem, and more importantly, there's a hyperscaler debt problem, which means we have to step in and psychologically support all bond markets. And we will print if we have to. Don't test us. And of course, that's from the donors, which is the hyperscalers who need $1 trillion next quarter. They're not going to stop. And then Bitcoin goes, oh my God. This is like unlimited irresponsibility, which could lead to unlimited printing. This Fed tightening rhetoric is a joke. And we're going up, which you've heard from me over and over and over. I had Besant thumbnails. I am proud to say I had Besant thumbnails 2 weeks before this was happening. But CoinDesk is now figuring it out. They're just like, oh, gee, Bitcoin went up 25% because of this. But there's no altcoin season, and a breakout might not be a breakout, and this might be mean reversion, and blah, 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 blah. And they're even starting to pick up on this. Oh, you're going to have AI agents on crypto. Crypto's next billion users might be agents, and they're paying with stablecoins. Okay, that might be true. That might be true. And that probably will be true. But the question is, which cryptocurrencies will go up in value as the velocity of money increases? That list is very small. And that list is in the YouTube member area and Patreon Platinum. And we are aggressively looking to expand that list, which is what we did on today's podcast. And guess what? There's going to be another podcast tomorrow in the YouTube member area. On this one, the next one, I'm actually going to let Toby talk because, it's like, Toby, what about this? Toby, what about that? Trust me. Trust me. Altcoin season. Okay, let me do this. What happens if altcoin season is in 15 alts? And what if it's a bunch of alts that no one owns? Like layer twos that no one owns, like everything that rolls up into ETH. What happens if certain networks that roll up into ETH become huge? I got another idea for you. Ready for this? What happens if ETH takes off? What happens to these ETH treasury companies and the ETH ETF? So if you're taking my word for it, that ETH is the primary beneficiary of these rapid fire stablecoin trades, right? You got to stake it, burn it, hold it as collateral, which means there are DeFi plays, or lend it, meaning the cryptocurrency has to be held by somebody in order to have value. So it's natural that, the ETH ETF went to the high volume zone where, people sold the uptick. So this is the Binance crash or the post Binance crash in the ETH ETF. Now I ask you this, the ETH ETF is at 18. The next volume zone is at 20. That's a fairly substantial percentage move. This is the ETH daily chart. Where's the volume zone on this? The volume zone is at 3,800. And if you look at this on a shorter term basis, the real volume started coming into ETH at 2308. So your best hope for a dip in Ethereum is 2308. And I don't know if I pulled up the 1 hour chart or not. Let me just do it now. And the reason I'm doing it is because you have one job right now, and that's to find whatever tactical support you can to get long. Not investment advice. Okay. So here on ETH, this is the 1 hour chart. And I'm sorry, I'm probably going too fast for TikTok. So right now, 2430 is a volume zone. It's not clear whether or not this is selling volume or dip buyers. It feels like it's bag holders getting out, is what it feels like. So let the bag holders get out. That's to be expected. I mean, at Morgan Stanley, we used to say retail sells the first rally. When you're making a real bottom, retail sells the first rally. So retail's like, oh my God, 2,300, 2,500, let's all get out. And I'm sure institutions, I'm sure there's big players who are doing the same thing. Let's all get out. Okay, no problem. Because what happens is if they all sell or they all get short, remember yesterday where I say traders miss a move, they fight it. So if bag holders sell and short sellers do their thing and ETH doesn't go down, or the max dip you get is 2,300, which to me feels extremely deep, but whatever. You're going to have guys down there. You're going to have BlackRock down there. You're going to have Fidelity down there. Fidelity had, its Ethereum ETF. What do you think these investment advisors, do you realize that Fidelity has a massive network of investment advisors like Schwab? They're staking their ETH from their ETF. What do you think that's going to mean on a dip? Cramer comes out and says, buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin dips. Fine. Near's down 3%. And I'm gonna say something even more wackadoo than you could even think. I may have said it already, but we talked about it. Toby said it, and I kind of agree. Zcash could go to 1,000. Should you be taking profits in Zcash and moving it into ETH or Bitcoin? Crazy, right? Insane. Maybe not as insane as you think. Is Solana a screaming buy for reasons you can't imagine? Like, look at this. This is very contrarian, but look at this selling volume in the Solana ETF. I mean, everywhere you go, I don't know. I mean, this could be buying volume. This feels like selling volume to me. It feels like they came out. Some people bought this, but they got a long road to get through all this. If you look at the ETF, I think they shorted this thing. You know why? Because if you look at a Solana perp contract, like this circle may mean you get an alpha intelligence sell signal at some point here, but there's no volume. The volume in Solana is at 160, 165. And with some baby volume at 135. So if they're all short the Solana ETF, what's going to happen to Solana when they got to cover the ETF trade? And then the crypto hedge funds, which we have not talked about, come pouring into this thing. And I don't even think Solana's the best trade. I don't think Solana's better than ETH anymore. I'm going to be honest with you. But who cares? Everyone's like, is Solana going to 1,000? The question you should be asking yourself, is Solana going to 135 or 160? And I think the answer to that is obvious based on the chart I just showed you. Where is the resistance in Solana? There isn't any. There isn't any. Where's the resistance in Ethereum? There isn't any. 3,800. And everybody is spooked by a Saturday afternoon dip. No one cares. They don't care in Zcash. Zcash is printing 807. Zcash may go to 1,000. And Zcash, if you own it, may be a money printing machine to roll over into an alt season that is probably going to be led by ETH itself or Zcash and Monero, either way. But this used to be obvious. Now it's a radical notion. A radical notion that Bitcoin could go to 96. Bitcoin could go to 110. Like every day I wake up and I look at an altcoin chart, I feel like being an even bigger ninny when it comes to Bitcoin. Because again, scarcity, right? And you've heard this from me so many times. The only scarce software in the world is the Bitcoin network, period, end of story. So here's Bitcoin. This pink line is a prior volume area. So this was volume in the past, around 77. It's where they sold everything before it collapsed. You have 3 massive alpha intelligence buy signals and huge volume down here, which is how I knew, it was never going through that. Everyone's looking for 40. All the volume was down there. They told you what the story was, whatever. But where's the new volume? Well, there was a new cluster of volume at 72. That's possible, I guess. 72 would be Christmas, because the next zones are 90 and the zone after that is at 110. And what the heck do you think is going to happen if Ethereum goes to 3,800? Like, just work the math backwards. ETH goes to 3,800. There's no resistance in Solana. They're short the Solana ETF. And even though I think Ripple needs a plan, Ripple was so dead. XRP was so dead that the only thing XRP registered on to say it wasn't dead was alpha intelligence. Because there were 3 buy signals down here, like August 9th, August 12th, and then boom. Now there's a sell signal here. I mean, we'll see what that means. A lot of bag holders getting out. Ripple could be selling, because Ripple is the one who dumps on everybody, to be honest. So Ripple could be dumping on people. If Ripple dumps on people and it doesn't go down, it's going to 280, because that's the next zone. Now, if XRP is at 280, you really have to start asking yourself, because there is a lot of volume between 280 and 340. You have to ask yourself if you really believe this thing can go to $5 if Ripple doesn't have a plan or an announcement. Because XRP is fast, but XRP is not ETH. It's not something that you have to hold. It's something that can move back and forth, but that's not what's going to create long-term value. If they come up with a staking or a burn mechanism, forget about it. That's $10. But I think you need to be smart about speed versus what gets held, where there's an incentive to hold on. Now, do you dump XRP at $1.40? No, because if XRP sits here and people buy the dip, the old saying, it's not a bull market until you can buy a dip and make money. If you can buy a dip and make money in any of these coins, XRP, I know people are super interested. Like, this is an example of what I'm talking about on, like, say, a 4-hour chart of XRP. Here we go. About what this dip today actually means, and frankly, any dip. Because we are now back to a very old school thing where if you get a red day, you buy until it gets ridiculous. Like, you do this on red days until proven wrong. So XRP breaks out. There's multiple volume zones from the present and the past. It spikes up and it comes right back down on top of the volume zone. There's a confluence of lows here. The guy from Alpha Intelligence got way into the weeds when he did some of this. A lot of times you're just finding support and resistance in an entirely new way. So, I think for what they charge for this, we got like a discount for what they charge for this, for the kind of information that we're getting. Like, who's talking about XRP at $3.80? Who's talking about Solana at $1.60? Who's talking about ETH at 3,800? Nobody. Who's talking about an alt season confined to a certain number of alts? Nobody. I mean, everyone's like just now figuring out that what Besant said about Bitcoin, like, moved the market. That's what moved Bitcoin 25%. Now, and everybody, because of the range, now thinks a 25% move in Bitcoin is huge. In some ways, it is, because they're now writing articles, or like trading desks are writing articles that this move in Bitcoin really sent a shockwave through the Bitcoin options market. So options, as a matter of education, options are determined by two things. Obviously, up or down, and what I call east and west, meaning how volatile is it when it moves? And in 10 words or less, you have a lot of funds. Goldman has a fund, BlackRock has a fund, where they short these bullish bets. They're short them. So not only are they underinvested in Bitcoin, but they're short bullish bets in Bitcoin in the derivatives market. And they basically got their faces ripped off. And this can happen again. I mean, these guys at the beach, they're packing their stuff. They're packing their stuff. You see this thing up tomorrow, they're definitely going to pack their stuff up and come home. Because they got a major, major problem. The pain is up in Bitcoin. And the bigger pain for crypto hedge funds is that a very narrow group of altcoins takes off with either Solana or ETH or whatever the new leader happens to be. Like ETH hasn't started yet, so there's more pain out there for anybody who is short, bearish, underinvested, disbelieving, or just got caught, with a 4-year cycle lollipop in their mouth, listening to Benjamin Cohen, how we're 100 days from a bottom. Whatever, dude. This is why you don't get negative. This is why. Yeah, you could have made a lot of trading profits on the way down. I get it. I understand that. But if you're in the business of like investing in this stuff and getting on a super cycle and just watching it go, which is what Toby says, which is what Raul Paul says, which is why we took the pain in Patreon and the YouTube member area and just sat there and listened to all the wah, knowing that when this thing turned, it was going to unwind the down move, because the down move wasn't a bear market. It was a correction in a bull market. It was a correction. Not only was it a correction in a bull market, it was a correction in a super cycle. And who's saying that? Nobody. And these ETFs, like, remember when everyone's like, oh, the ETFs are going to change the whole world. The Bitcoin ETF is going to change everything. Look at this. Somebody tell me, like, all right, there's a lot of volume between 44 and 46. So I'm not disrespecting the resistance. If anything, the resistance in Bitcoin, in the Bitcoin ETF, implies that they may be moving over to altcoins temporarily. However, when you look at this Bitcoin ETF, if it gets loose and it takes out this prior high, which would be, the fourth wave, if it takes out the top of what they call the previous fourth, if you don't want to do it, when you take out the previous fourth, where's the volume? Where's the resistance? 50? Meh. 51? Meh. 55? Maybe. Next up, above 55, you're talking about 63. Now, you're like, okay, Bill, that's nice, but what does that translate into? Bro, that translates into 110. Goldman's got to cover. BlackRock's got to cover. Hedge funds have to get involved. Retail is not interested. And here's a question. Who's the seller? Who is going to sell all this Bitcoin to these people? Oh, you can get $213 million at the start of the month from Michael Saylor. Good luck. And it's got to be even worse in ETH. Like, ETH has got all the stablecoin movement. Like, there's huge amounts of activity on Solana. Will that translate over to token holders? Sure, maybe. Yeah. I mean, the meme coin mania was so extreme that it moved Solana. And if you go full internet capital markets, Solana can move. I'm not saying Solana's not going to move. I'm saying what's going to move first. And the idea of Bitcoin and Ethereum is so old school, so absurd, so simplistic. It's going to be seen as stupid. But it's not stupid if you consider how the AI world is going to change everything, particularly since, crypto media, crypto YouTube, crypto retail does not understand what's going on here at all. Like they're just like, oh, okay, let's get a reporter on this and call a couple guys and try to figure out what the heck is going on. And then I got more fun for you because the fun never ends. Here's a question. If Bitcoin and Ethereum start exploding, right? What crypto equities can start moving? What crypto equities? Well, am I going to be a nice guy and throw a hint in as what that could be? Well, obviously, Circle would be one of them, right? And Tom Lee's company, I think, is BMNR. ETH Treasury companies, destroyed. I don't even know if there's a point in looking at the charts. They're so destroyed. But let me ask you something. Because I'm getting the sense, I know you won't. That's fine. But what about Coinbase stock? And you're like, Coinbase? Why is Coinbase an issue? Well, what happens if Base, which is huge, becomes like the primary network for AI agents to move massively and have that value and those fees translate up into ETH when all those Base transactions settle? Because that's what a layer 2 does, right? Everything moves on the layer 2, but then the value can move up into ETH because they eventually have to clear the transaction on ETH, as I understand it. What happens if that translates into massive revenue for Coinbase? You want to take a look at where that stock is? Let's have fun. Let's take a look at where the stock is. Like, again, this to me feels like short selling. Okay, yeah. So there's massive resistance and no reason to think Coinbase can go Coinbase can go up. Fine. Okay. There's a bottoming signal down here, and this to me looks like massive liquidation, a huge give up trade, and short selling. Especially when you see this much gray. Like crypto's weird. They either have no resistance or it looks like massive short selling. What happens if everyone has dumped Coinbase? So not only are the mutual funds, they're overly long the stocks the Fed told them to get the heck out of. They don't own Bitcoin. They don't own the crypto stocks. And there are short sellers out there who have pounded Tom Lee's stock, Coinbase, Circle, whatever. Like, look at this. Like, you want to have a little fun? Let's do this. Let's plot Circle versus Goldman. So Circle is the candlestick chart. Destroyed. And Goldman, one way or the other, I'm not picking on them necessarily, but somebody is caught with this hyperscaler private credit. Somebody's going to be caught. Circle straight down, investment banks straight up. What's wrong with this picture? Well, what's wrong with this picture is that the AI trade has been done. and the banks, the investment banks, the stock market's fine. Of course it is. The trading revenue, the revenue from the IPOs, the revenue from issuing all these bonds for the hyperscalers. Of course it is. Of course, the earnings are driving that. But where is the next group of earnings? No one's talking about this. And we went over the whole Galaxy Digital thing. They criticized Galaxy Digital for having a CEO that talks about macro and having one group in the company talking about crypto and another group in the company talking about their AI data centers. And everyone's making fun of them for having a mixed message. Really? So what's wrong with a mixed message on macro, debt, having AI data center revenue, and being like the fourth biggest Bitcoin holder? What's wrong with that? Oh, by the way, the stock has done nothing, and there's like a double cup and handle, and we've covered it and covered it and covered it. Everyone's acting like this is going to revert to the mean. This hasn't even started yet. Like early days, the concept of early doesn't apply. I tried to apply it to baseball. I tried to say people are filing into the stadium. This feels like in like American baseball, where they publish the schedule, I don't know, a year before the season starts. Right now, you're just finding out who your team's going to play. Forget about the stadium. Forget about the national anthem. Forget about people filing in. Forget about the first inning or the first part or the second half. Forget about that. That's not happening. This is the crypto verse is the planet of clueless. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. People just have no clue as to what's going to go on. Some people probably get the idea that Bitcoin is scarce, and there is nothing scarce because you can push a button in AI and replicate everything. I think everyone understands that, although that's not priced into Bitcoin at all. At all. Don't even make me pull up the Bitcoin chart versus NASDAQ or banks or boring. Oh yeah, there's going to be a catch-up trade. Why is there going to be a catch-up trade? Not only is there going to be a catch-up trade, but why is it just going to keep going and be a super cycle? Oh, the next Bitcoin bull run that lasts 4 years will now start. Everyone genuflect and it goes up. No, man. It's the super cycle where you need to be in the super coins. And I don't think Wall Street gets it either, because Wall Street is pouring in after what Besant did. Silver's at 68 and everybody is buying derivative bets for silver to go to 90, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But obviously nobody believes Bitcoin's going to 110 because nobody's writing about, oh my God, they're printing money, buy gold and silver. No. You buy gold and silver out of fear over what's going on with the debt market, which is why gold went to 5,000 to begin with. Geopolitical fear, sovereign fear, debt fear. This is the liquidity trade or the AI trade or both. Because what are AI agents going to do with stablecoins? You're going to have, Uncle Sugar needs to issue debt to the stablecoin companies. So you're just going to keep feeding this. You're going to keep feeding AI agents stablecoins, okay? But what happens when the stablecoins start moving back and forth? Does that make the value of the stablecoin or the dollar go up or down based on the math we have showed ad nauseum? The more stablecoins or the faster stablecoins move around, the less the stablecoins are worth. But you're like, wait a minute, the stablecoins are pegged. Yeah, they're pegged to the dollar. Stablecoins flying around makes the dollar go lower without having to look at DXY. You're like, whoa. The faster AI agents move, the less the dollar is worth, the more Bitcoin is worth, and the more Ethereum is worth. The capture for the stablecoin movement is going to be on Bitcoin, on Solana, on ETH. And all XRP has to do is figure out a staking mechanism or a burn. And trust me, everybody is going to push the button, but that's going to be after some insane movement in both Bitcoin and Ethereum. Because Bitcoin and Ethereum is so boring, no one will talk about it, which is why you should talk about it. I mean, again, this could just absolutely freaking smoke. And no one is positioned for that. No one. Retail might be, because if retail just hodled and just walked away, they're going to be fine. The rising tide will lift all boats. Question is, what goes up, when XRP gets to $4, what continues to go up after that? But who cares? I mean, that's a secondary concern based on the fact that at any point where you get a dip, you have to be involved, because when the bus leaves, and if this gets to its destination, if the 4-year cycle is supposed to end in October and this thing is at the all-time high in either October or December or sooner, what the hell is everyone going to do? The pain is going, okay, well, Bitcoin's now at 83, 96, 110. Now what do I do? And this gets harder for retail. Like, institutions don't care. They're used to buy it high and sell higher. They're just all going to buy, right? They're just going to be like, okay, we need 2% of our portfolio in this, just buy it. Just like when it started to go down, they're like, oh my God, software is a disaster. Sell everything. They don't care. But retail's going to have a really hard time figuring this out. And retail may wind up buying the wrong altcoins. I'm not saying the altcoins are going to go down, but there may be altcoins that go up and everyone's like, oh my God, we got to buy this. And it doesn't perform. So, obviously we're trying to sell research. I think you're going to need research, because everything doesn't win in an AI world. And even if it does, it wins in groups or buckets where, like ETH stuff will move, Solana stuff might move. And there may be a whole bunch of new stuff. I mean, we're doing live small cap picks tomorrow, which is something that the YouTube member area is kind of famous for, where Toby does her thing and just looks at a whole bunch of stuff on Banter Bubbles and starts picking using her abilities, which, frankly, have been minimized by everybody because we have to listen to the 4-year cycle, which I can guarantee you is over. Those people are going to get embarrassed by this whole thing. Not only are you not going to start the rally in October, October may be the first correction. Like, imagine the pain of everyone having to chase this from 83 to 96 to 110. And then the FOMO will be unbelievable at 110. And then you get the correction. And the correction could be deep. But you're not getting it now. Why, after everything I just said about how they're all running off the beach, they all got to cover their derivatives bets, crypto hedge funds are obviously not long enough. And literally everybody has the wrong AI trade on. Oh yeah, and Bitcoin broke a trend line. Did I forget about that? In other words, when basic technical analysis starts working, you're in a major, what a guy I used to work for used to say on currency. I used to get his cappuccino. Couldn't remember his last name. His name was Mike. Short, round, intense Italian guy. When you break a trend line in Bitcoin, you retest it and you just explode. This is a fundamental shift. What happened here is a fundamental shift, because you know what? If the 4-year cycle thing was right, and this was scary, all good trend lines have 3 points, right? If this thing had stopped here and people were scared of this, that this thing could have waterfalled lower. It was spooky. It looked like 2018, but then they broke out. It sat there and then boom. Do you think Besant knew where that trend line was? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, he did. Oh yeah, he did. Right. So probably the reason why it broke the trend line is because they kind of leaked that stuff out slowly. BlackRock comes out and says, look out above, and boom. Basic technical analysis starts working. It's a fundamental shift. Like this Bitcoin futures contract, this is where 96 comes from, by the way, from yesterday. What's up here? Like, you have psychological resistance at 83. It's kind of natural to me that it would get there. What's here? Nothing. There's 96 and nothing. It's 96 and nothing. It's 96 and super cycle. Can you imagine? Like, if we're going to be stupid and talk about ETH going up, if we're going to be stupid and talking about a narrow list of altcoins going completely parabolic, let me just ask a simple question. Bitcoin breaks through 96. Where does it stop? Well, does anybody remember what they were all publishing at 120? Do you remember this? Like, you know, the investment banks and all these characters were racing each other. 250, 450, 750. Frankly, that was a sign of a bubble because no price was too high. Michael Saylor was talking about $1 million. You know, the Orange Man's kids were on conferences talking about $1 million target. Is anybody even talking about 100? And if you did, are you crazy? The answer would be yes. 750 was obvious at 120. Now it's at 78 and no one wants to talk about 100. So how ridiculous can this get if they took out some of these resistance levels? You don't think BlackRock knows this? I got news for you. You have a fund that buys Bitcoin and sells Bitcoin options or Bitcoin call options as a way to generate income because, you know, Bitcoin is like a boring utility stock now. It's all boring. Okay. You start massively devaluing the US dollar with debt from the private and the public sector. Where can this go? There's no stopping it. Was there any stopping NASDAQ? Was there any stopping NASDAQ or KOSPI? Why does anybody think that whatever the chip stocks did on the upside cannot happen to Bitcoin? Like the AI trade is, you know, straight up correction, straight up. Is there some kind of reason? Like this move in KOSPI was April 1st to June 24th. That's how long it took from KOSPI to go from 5,000 to 9,000. And that was a move led by two stocks. Two stocks almost doubled an index. Two stocks took an entire country with it. This can't happen in Bitcoin with a trend line break. Yeah, you can definitely look at 1 hour charts to find the dips, and you better be doing that. You better be doing that because, you know, you may get a lot of dips in the beginning. You may get a lot of volatility. You could get, you know, I don't know, you get 78, 72, 83, 78, or 83, 72, whatever. You got to know where the support is because that's where you got to go to get involved, and more involved. I could say the point has been made. You know what? The point has not been made. It has not been made by anybody. Nobody. I mean, I'm trying to hit 25,000 followers with roughly 1,000 people a day. God bless you all. You know, there's 800 people in Patreon, some free, some paid. Are they getting this? You're damn skippy. They're going to get it because I'm gonna find Toby and me are going to find these altcoins that are going to smoke once ETH starts, and it's not a huge list. Now it may be a bigger list in the small cap world because people are going to start copying ETH's model. We found 2 layer 2s today. One Toby liked more than the other. I'm down. I think these were like 500 and 400 market cap. They're out there. Just that I don't think it's like, you know, it's not alt season. It's alt reason. If you can find a reason that matches a token that goes up when the velocity of money goes up, which is something that crypto research companies will not figure out until much later. Yeah, they'll figure that out when ETH is at 6,000. The point has not been made. Not. And nobody is ready for it, which is my job, which is to get you ready for it, is to get you ready. And that's what our research products are about. You know, Like we got research products, we got the alpha intelligence stuff so we can get involved in the tactical stuff and the trading. Lux Algo is still out there. I may wind up bringing some of that back in so we can find where equilibrium and premium zones are on daily charts. I would suspect that they're at like much higher levels. And some of that may not be as useful because this market went sideways and all these altcoins died. Final word on XRP. And I got to be honest with you. Some of the stuff I got right and some of the stuff was like, we had XRP just based on a read of the chart by a computer model, not Alpha Intelligence, a computer model we built that basically said this chart of XRP is broken, dump it. It wound up on the dump list. Now, of course, I treaded very carefully with that because we don't want to be discouraging those people because they've suffered for a long time. And one thing I said but didn't say enough is like sometimes when the chart is so broken, it's so broken, you can't even touch it. Boom. As soon as there's a reason to touch it, it just goes straight up. The chart heals itself. The chart goes from broken to parabolic. Just like Kospi went from, oh my God, this is going to go to the moon. It's going up forever. I have to get 5x levered long. I'm going to be able to get a wife and a house like all these poor people in Korea. And then boom. XRP was and could be the same way. Stellar could also be it. Don't forget, they want to build on Stellar to clear every single securities transaction. Oh, by the way, that chart was also broken. If I can ever get it 100% right, based on what I'm looking at, we can have these streams on my yacht. But that's okay, because mainly we got this right. We didn't get bearish. We didn't buy into all the reasons why it was going down, because it's simple as this. It was a correction in a bull market. Now, I appreciate everybody who somehow got on the stream this morning because I don't know. I screwed up the YouTube part, but the members were here anyway. All right, let's welcome who's here. We had Zepedas, the Fuzz Crypto. Zepedas on both streams. The YouTube member area stream is the only guy because there was something wrong with the notifications. I feel like the internet is broken somehow. ChatGPT, I don't know. Right? We retrace in September or turbo bull from here. I don't know, bro. It feels like you can have a Rectember correction or October, but why would it stop right now? Cyberpunch, Michael, NM49. You can hear me. Excellent. Country Club Hillbilly likes Solana rather than ETH. I understand that. Sam Strong is here. 1964 Zen. That was a very good year. Crypto Pulse. Gary the Holder, a member. Yav, a member. John, a new member. Thank you. Dark, a Spartan Colonel. Thomas Chai. Georgios. Shelly Farmer Allen, the one-woman hedge fund. Grandpa Keeter. Somebody call Big Daddy Crypto. It's on. Dejeski, the DeFi Master. Oh, my God, the DeFi Master. Where do you see what's in the YouTube member area, bro? You're going to lose your mind. Can you see the DXY open tomorrow afternoons brings us some more green bubbles? Dude, the problem with DXY is that when you sell the dollar, there's nothing else to buy. Like you're going to buy the euro, you're going to buy the yen. Like that's what's required to have DXY to go down. Now, again, Scott Bessent wants the yen to go up. So yeah, maybe. But I don't think DXY is the metric anymore. It's the devaluation of the dollar through stablecoin velocity. And if that makes no sense, it's the devaluation of the dollar versus Bitcoin because it's the fastest moving thing out there. Can gold and silver do it? Yeah. But everyone's doing that trade. No one's doing it in Bitcoin. I think I said that. T-Bone, what's up? What did I miss? Bro, you're never too late. You're never too early. You're right on time. So help me God, you are right on time. DNT Saver is in the house. Grandpa Keeter might take advantage of the dip. Tex Media. Thank you for standing strong these last few months. Thank you. But you know who deserves mostly all the credit for that? Toby. Which is why for today's podcast, which I'm so mad I screwed up the YouTube on, I put her face only on the thumbnail. That was her personal victory lap right here. And I may have even drawn the picture right too. Like dead or alive, alive. VIP Live. The dollar breaks, AI stalls, alts wake up. The AI agent economy stack. VIP altcoin brief. Just new hype. VIP picks. The woman just didn't stop. And I kept coming at her with all this disaster stuff. And she's like, shut up, whatever. She made a Lego video making fun of me, which of course we did not publish because the idea is to make fun of anybody. The idea is just to get it effing right. Just get it right. Because you know what? If it's the super cycle, you have to get it right. You cannot miss this. You get stopped out, you get stopped out. You don't get stopped out, it's a super cycle that everyone figures that out when it's at 120 or 250 or whatever. Or if ETH goes to some idiotic Tom Lee target, you don't know. Tom Lee has his math. What happens if any half of that math comes true? Okay, I've made the point. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the market update for today. We will see you early, often in Patreon, in the YouTube member area. 6th Street Crypto is coming back, and Alpha Intelligence tutorials with me will be coming very soon. We will see you soon.